السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. We resume the second lecture on parenting in Islam. Of course, this topic it's a vast and broad, and in many ways it's a science and an art form. It's a challenging job for parents, and these lectures are meant to help us understand the importance of this topic and better equip ourselves to do better as parents. Those of you who are already parents, to improve your parenting, and those of you who are yet to be parents, to learn and gain knowledge, so when the day comes, inshallah, you are better prepared. Last time we ended off talking about the importance of dua. The importance of dua. As a parent, you want your child to be righteous, to have good manners, to be someone who establishes salah and upholds certain characteristics and so on and so forth. The most important tool in this is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you and to grant you these qualities. And one of the moments where dua is very important is the moment when the father, the husband, has intimate relationships with the wife. There is a very important dua. There's a very important dua associated with this. Does anybody know it? The guys who are married, you guys better know this dua. So this is important. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, if any of you, is to come to his wife, then he should say, Bismillah, Allahumma jannibna ash-shaytan wa jannib ash-shaytan ma razaqtana. So, if this relationship leads to a child being born, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that no devil would harm this child. So this is an important moment of dua, that just to complete the topic of dua from last time. So be sure to take these matters seriously. The matters of making dua. Those of you who are married, be attuned, be awake to making this dua as you have relationships with your wife. طيب. Moving on to these first few lectures are going to be not super specific, but focused around emphasizing the importance of this topic overall, this topic of parenting. So another important topic in the early stages of development of the child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made breastfeeding or nursing the child and the nurturing of the young child a right of the mother. This is one of the very important tasks of the mother, that the mother nurses the child, breastfeeds the child, and feeds the child. There are important implications for a woman who breastfeeds a child. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the mother from breastfeeding equivalent to the biological mother. Okay? So this tells you how big of a deal it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions from amongst the lists of those who are forbidden from marriage, He says, وَأُمَّهَاتُكُمْ اللَّاتِي أَرْضَعْنَاكُمْ وَأَخَوَاتُكُمْ مِنَ الرِّضَاعَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and your milk mothers who nursed you, your sisters through nursing, these are forbidden for you for marriage. وعن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said, يحرم من الرضاعة ما يحرم من الولادة. So the relationship that is established has implications when a woman breastfeeds a child. It's important to ensure that the mother is enabled to fulfill her right and duty to nurse and care for a child, for the young child. We're talking for a child who's very young here. A woman should not be deprived or prevented from doing this. This is actually harmful to the child. And this is the right of the child. The child has the right at this early stage to be with their mother and to be breastfed and nursed by the mother. To separate the child from his mother, or for the mother to be negligent in this matter, is something very serious. It's important to understand from an Islamic perspective, this is a right of the child and a duty of the mother. When we look at the role of the mother and the important job that the mother has, in some cases parents can be living, a person can have their mother and their father, but it's almost as though the child is an orphan due to the extreme negligence and preoccupation of parents. So some parents act extremely busy, throwing their kids from one place to another and barely make any time for them. Is it possible for anyone to fulfill the role of the mother better than the mother herself? This is something to think about, and obviously not. The mother is best suited to fulfill this role. The job of the mother is a sacred and honorable job. Okay? So this is important. The mother who fulfills her duty and cares for her children is doing the real work. We live in a time today where mothers are being pushed into the workforce. Go work, go get a career, and leave your children for daycares, for nannies, for whoever to care for the children. And it's as though the job of the mother to stay and care for the child, as though this is not real work. In reality, the mother who goes out in the workforce is actually fleeing and escaping from this very important job. She's abandoning a job that is very critical. Nannies and daycare workers can never fulfill the job of the mother. No matter what they do, a daycare resembles a shelter. It resembles a place for a kid to be sheltered, a kid to play and run around, but he will not receive the level of nurturing and care and attention and love that a mother will provide. The person who's caring for the child in these places is a paid employee. They don't have the affection or the connection or the motivation, and oftentimes they're caring for many, many children at one time. So the child is not really well attended to. The job of the mother, if you really think about it, it's more serious and more difficult than most any other jobs. Okay? Think about it. It's more difficult and more serious than any other job. She's not to be viewed as unemployed. People think the mother is staying at home and caring for her children, she's unemployed. She's not contributing to the economy, she's not part of the workforce. In reality, behind every real man is a great mother. Behind everyone who grows up to be a solid individual is a solid mother who raised him. And when you look at the mother's job, it's a 24-hour job. It's a 24-hour job. She's basically on call anytime, day or night, depending on the situation, depending on you're sick, how old the kid is, how many kids there are. The mother's work is ongoing, 24/7 job. It's a difficult job, and it's the most honorable job. She deals with basically all sorts of matters, everything. from studying, from learning, from reading, from walking, from eating, from cleaning, from sickness. A lot is expected of her. It was said that every time, it was said there was a doctor, and every time a sick child would be brought in, one of the things the doctors would prescribe is that they would prescribe the care of the mother. So for a child, the care and the love and the nurturing of the mother is a huge part of their development. When we go to this topic of parenting and we look at the Salaf, many people sometimes they bring up this argument. What is the argument? They will say, did the Sahaba, did the Tabi'een, did they learn about parenting? Did they take some kind of parenting course? And the reality is, the sciences of many of the ulum were not broken down into an organized science at the time. But yet, the Salaf achieved and set a very high bar of excellence. They were very excellent individuals and achieved so much. And how were they able to do all of this, even though they achieved in all areas of life? Take for example the science of the language, of al-nahm, wal-sarf, wal-balagha, the rhetoric and grammar of the language. Did the Salaf go to an Arabic course and learn about nahm and balagha? Did they? No, they did not. And a lot of those sciences were not organized in that way, but yet they were the most eloquent of speakers, and they were the most eloquent in language. Think about it, that they were actually disciplined by the revelation, by the Quran and the Sunnah, transformed them and led them to exemplify all of these characteristics. And similarly, this was also applied to parenting. They exemplified good parenting, excellent parenting, just as they did all of the other areas. But later on, scholars came to organize the sciences. They came to organize this knowledge. They made books of nahw and books of language and books of parenting and books tarbiyat al-awlad fil Islam and all these sciences. Why? To make the knowledge easier for the next generations to learn, to make it simple and understandable. At the same time, we're going to emphasize this point as we go along through this course, is that whatever of the sciences you learn, it should never conflict with the Quran and the Sunnah. Should never conflict with the Quran and the Sunnah, the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. We mentioned last time that parenting is something that is constant and ongoing. Anybody who's a parent knows when you're with your children, you never really stop parenting. There's no such thing as a time to parent and a time not to parent. The parenting is consistent and ongoing. And it's constantly evolving, right? As your child grows and matures, your parenting has to adapt and adjust. You're always adjusting your parenting. Okay? It's not a manual that you're following. All of your time with the children is a form of parenting. Okay? Every word that comes out of your mouth, every manner, every action, is all part of the parenting process. Everything you do is a practical example for the child to absorb. The child is like a sponge. He's absorbing and learning from everything around them. Parenting takes place all throughout the day and night. There's no location for parenting. There's no spot in the house that you designate for parenting. There's no time that's designated for parenting. Parenting is ongoing. Any time of day or night is a parenting situation. For example, if the child is raised in an environment, take this example for it. If a child is raised in an environment, let's say where the woman or the mother is constantly ridiculed, and mistreated. This would plant in his heart seeds and would normalize for the child. One second. This would normalize for the child that this is a normal treatment of a woman or a mother or a wife. It's not being communicated. Nobody's sitting the child down and saying, this is how you should treat, a wife or a mother. No, the child is retaining this, and these seeds are being planted from his observation, what he's seeing. So the child is growing and thinking, this is normal. And then one day they become somebody who mistreats their wife or ridicules her, and so on and so forth. This is the outcome. So he would later on take on such manners. We always say a good rule, and this is a rule in Islam, is that prevention is always better than treatment. We want to be people, and I want to highlight to you guys that part of this course is really going to focus on something that is not constantly or regularly focused on within our community, which is the psychological side of things, the mental side for the child, okay, their psychological development. So when it comes to psychological problems, treatment is often difficult and not often successful. It's not easy to treat psychological problems and to address them. So as Muslims, we want to prevent psychological problems from happening. We want to prevent a child from growing up being wounded, being damaged, being harmed psychologically. So the prevention in this case is to ensure that the child is raised in a safe and stable environment, an environment that protects him psychologically. We should not escape the reality of what causes psychological problems, and rather address it as needed. As a parent, you need to notice, you need to be observant, you need to be attuned. What's going on with my child? You notice something that seems off, seems abnormal, seems unusual. You want to explore this. You want to be able to consult, talk to people who have specialization, whether it be, some people when they see this, their simple response is to say, oh, this is hasad, or this is jinn, or this is so on and so forth. Of course, along with using, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in adhkar and utilizing ruqya and so on and so on, and self-evaluating what we're doing as parents, and of course taking the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as an example, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. In the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have the best example. So take him as an example in all areas of our life. Take him as a guide. As the Prophet ﷺ treated children, how did he treat children? How did he teach them? How did he communicate with them? We have many examples of this that we'll be covering. Addressing the problem immediately upon noticing it. I can't tell you how often I see individuals who come in with a problem, but the problem has been ongoing for years. They come into the clinic, and this problem maybe started 4 or 5 years ago. Why do you take so long to seek out help? Why do you take so long to address the problem? This is not really helping the case. In many cases, people ignore the problem, they put their head in the sand, they avoid the problem. In reality, we need to consult with imams, with professionals like psychologists, physicians, doctors, whatever is needed, you need to consult, you need to address the problem as best as you can. I want to take a few minutes and talk about the adversity, and in particular, the adversity that we ourselves create. We are ready as a society, as adults, when you look on a day-to-day basis in the world we live in today, as adults we find many challenges, many obstacles, much adversity that we face. Let alone the adversity our children are facing growing up in this world today. So in order to raise our children to be righteous, they need special care and attention. In the face of all of these challenges, you need to be up to the task. You need to be aware of all of the challenges that your children will face. But the last thing that you want to do is create more challenges by your own hands, by your own doing. Many parents, without even realizing it, without intending necessarily, they themselves are creating more problems. How do they do this? Your children are going to school, a lot of the things in the outside world are already conflicting with Islam. And they're already giving your child an uphill battle. Then you have a parent who is extremely focused on the dunya and earning money and is absent and not attentive to their children. So you find mothers today, many mothers and families who are working and neglecting their children because of their preoccupation with their job and their career, especially the children of a young age. You find one or both parents who are extremely ignorant when it comes to parenting. And an ignorant parent can sometimes, even though they mean well, can do a lot of things that creates more problems for the children, and we'll get into details about that. Regarding raising children and parenting, an ignorant parent, he can't give what the children needs. Like there's a saying in Arabic, it says, فَاقِدُ الشَّيْء لَا يُعْطِيهِ. A person can't give what they don't have, right? So you need to equip yourself as a parent to be able to do the job of parenting and tarbiyah. We make things hard on ourselves in many cases. A lot of times in the early years, we ignore the bad habits our children are developing. We're not paying attention to the behaviors that are happening. We're not paying attention to what we're doing, what the children are doing with their time. And so this may seem harmless when the child is 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, but as this child grows physically, becomes a teenager, becomes a young adult, these problems become magnified. They become magnified, and now they become very difficult to address. And had we been paying attention, we would have been able to address them accordingly at the younger age. So don't be a parent that ignores these early years and then comes later on. Now they think the solution is to force them into some school or take them into another country. They're looking for a quick fix. For 5 or 6 or 7 years, they were carelessly parenting. They were an absent parent, and now the child is 14, 15, 16. There are many problems, and now the problems are hard to address. And in many cases, these problems have been created by our own hands. You add to this the outside influences that are conflicting with Islam and the many fitan and temptations that are all around us. You exponentially add that all together, and it's going to create a massive problem. So we don't want to be the cause of more adversity. So again, in order to avoid this, you need to better equip yourself to be able to do a better job parenting. You look at children when they're going out. You may be sitting day and night telling your son and daughter ABC, XYZ, for example, and as they go out into the community, they are finding people telling them the exact opposite, and people telling them the things that contradict with Islam and contradict with what you're teaching them. This is just an example of the many challenges that we encounter. So there's no other time where parenting is extremely important. You would ideally hope that, back home, here they call it the ministry of education. Back home they call it Wazarat al-Tarbiyah wa Ta'aleem. Yani it was part of the school system that was not just teaching, but a place of discipline and a place of raising children. So ideally you would hope that all of these things would be in sync. You as a parent, your extended family, the school system, the sports, the coaches, all of these would all be in sync, teaching and promoting the right morals and values of Islam. But this is not the case. Many times we even find our extended family causing us problems and challenges. We find the school system is opposing us. We find many things in the community that is creating challenges for us. So then you feel as a parent, you have to do the majority of the work. I want to focus on a couple of we'll go a few mistakes that parents make. Number one is a parent sometimes doesn't pay attention to the cognitive ability of the child. قدرة عقله. What's his level of development? What is his level of intelligence? What is he really capable of? Right? If you expect too much of the child and you're not mindful of his age, right? A 4-year-old child is not like a 12-year-old child, is not like a 17-year-old young man. These brain levels, their processing abilities, their ability to think, comprehend, understand are very different. You have to be able to communicate at their level. You have to be able to make sure they understand what you're saying, they understand what the problems are, however you're dealing and treating the child. Otherwise, many parents start to expect and burden their children with more than they can handle or even understand, especially at a young age. So you have to take into consideration that the child is growing, learning, and progressing through these different stages of development. Therefore, you go work, and this is not even parenting, but if you go in any place to get a job with youth or children, they want to see that you're able to speak at the level of the children. They want to be able to see that you're clever enough to understand how to communicate with an 8-year-old and how to communicate with a 14-year-old. If I sit an 8-year-old and I talk to him like the same way I talk to an adult, then you're really not doing anything except burdening the child with more than they can handle or more than they can grasp. So the other thing is, for example, the child at different stages, they may have, many children have a big imagination. Okay? They're creative, they have an imagination. You might see children saying things that you think are ridiculous or even you might accuse them of lying. A child might say a story describing something that happened where he's saying the head of his brother flew off and he reattached it and so on and so forth. Some kind of you have to be able to understand the level of the child, their imagination, their level of understanding, right? Somebody might grab the child and say, "Why are you lying? Why are you making up these stories?" He's actually not really lying. He might not even understand what lying is. He's just being using his imagination. So these are examples of just understanding and how to understand the child and his age of development. We'll go into these topics in more detail, but this is the first mistake that I wanted to touch on, is parents just not understanding how to communicate and how to deal with a child. Like sometimes I see a father, he's talking to like a 2-year-old, and he's telling him stuff that no way, shape or form the child understands what he's saying. And he's 2 years old, and you have to understand how primitive their ability to communicate and understand at that age is, and address them at their level. Number 2 issue is the careless speech and language that many parents have. Many parents, they speak to their children in a way that is damaging and destructive. Okay? The verbal language that they use, right? Many parents are very overly casual about this. They think, it's as if the child is their property and they can kind of speak to them any which way and address them any which way, and it doesn't really matter and it has no implications. As if they can harm them and abuse them, and it doesn't really matter. Whether you realize it or not, every word and action you do has an effect and has an impact. So we'll spend a little bit of detail and give some examples on this, okay? Let's take, for example, you're in the grocery store, you have a child with you, he's misbehaving, he's acting out, you're in the supermarket, okay? You say to him, if you don't stop, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to leave you and go home. I'm going to leave you here. What do you guys think of the statement? For a young child, what would that be like? Anybody?
Scary.
Yeah, and you picture a child, you're telling him, I'm going to leave you in the mahal and I'm going to go. Yeah, and this is the parent. His intention is to correct the behavior. But in reality, he's scaring the kid. In many cases, he's borderline terrorizing him. And he's using his safety as a tool in the parenting process. Right? He's making the child feel that his safety is in jeopardy. Yani this kind of threatening to kick him out, threatening to leave him, threatening to divorce his mother, these types of tactics it's not acceptable. It's not a proper way to address the behavior. The kid is in the store causing a problem. What could you say to him? What kind of approach can you use? Where are my parents here? Muntasar.
Can you ask the question one more time?
Your kid's having a tantrum in the grocery store. What are you gonna tell him? You're gonna tell him the one that I'm gonna leave you here and go, right?
I'm gonna tell him, you know what I'm gonna tell him. I can't say it.
I would say, next time you are not coming with me, you are not behaving well now.
You're not behaving well now, so what? I didn't hear it.
Next time you are not coming with me.
Next time you are not coming with me. Okay, you could say that. Yeah. Muntasar, what about you? What would you say?
I would say, you really want to know,
Yeah, I really want to know.
No, I would say, don't act like shaitan and I can't really say it, they don't understand who I am.
طيب. For example, you could say, if you don't stop this behavior, we all have to leave. We all have to go home, or we won't get to do the activity that you wanted to do. Something along those lines. You don't want to use the tactics of threatening him with his safety, threatening him with his food, threatening him with his... would you say to the child, if you don't stop misbehaving, no Quran for you? Would you say that? Is that a good tactic, Tas?
I said that one time.
Yeah, that's not a good tactic. You don't want to take away their ibadah as a punishment. Okay? So, you don't want to use these kinds of things but these are casual statements many people make. I'll leave you, you're not going to come home with us. Right? So you make him feel unsafe and so on and so forth. Another example. Okay? Let's say there's some nice food made at home. Maybe there was a cake baked, something like that, a nice meal. The kid comes in, he sees this food, he can't resist himself, so he eats all the food, he eats all the cake. It was supposed to be for everyone, he eats it all. What are you gonna tell him? A lot of people, in this case, they will call the kid names. Right? What will they say? Ya haywan, why did you do that? Why are you so dumb? Why are you so this? You're an embarrassment. You don't care about anybody, right? What's the problem with this?
Demeaning.
You're demeaning, you're ridiculing, right? You're putting the kid down, right? You're using a label, right? You're labeling the child rather than doing what? Rather than addressing the actual behavior. There's a difference between the behavior, the manner, the action he did, and who the person is. And rather than saying you're dumb, right? You're a haywan. Is he a haywan? That's debatable, right?
It's debatable.
Yeah. Rather than calling him you're a shaitan, I don't know about that tactic. It's not acceptable. Right? Rather than calling him names like this, you need to be addressing, because when you do this, what are you doing? You're planting negative thoughts about himself, right? You're causing him to think negatively of himself, that I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me, I can never do it right, all these kind of thoughts, and this can lead to the kid ending up being somebody who lacks confidence, right? He loses his confidence. He doesn't take on responsibility. He flees away from responsibilities and taking on tasks. Why? Because he doesn't think that he's able to, right? Let's move to another example. A mother or parents says in a casual conversation, some people do this, maybe not that many, but some people will say, we never intended to have you. You weren't a planned pregnancy. You weren't in our plans, basically. Okay? And this type of thing you say in front of a child, again, it's psychologically damaging. All these examples we're going to give are how statements can be wounding and statements can be harmful. Make the child feel not wanted, not feel like he's important to the family, or that he was really loved by the parents. And this can be said very casually. In a moment of anger, something just comes up. You have to be mindful. What are you saying? Especially some statements, people will actually say it more directly. We never really wanted you. You especially, we didn't want. I wish we never had you. A mother or father may say this to their kid, right? These statements are, of course, not acceptable. Another type of statement people say is, they'll say something like, I wish you were like this, or I wish you were like that. Okay? In these type of situations, look, you do your job as a parent, you do the best that you can, and then Islamically, you have to have rida bil qada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wal qadar. You have to have acceptance of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained. That's the hand that your child may look a certain way, they may have a certain personality, they may have turned out a certain way. You have to have acceptance of that situation. Don't use that as a means to make the child feel unwanted, or make him feel like there are things that it's not his fault, and you're putting him down because of that. Let's go to another example. If you say to the child, especially when there's parents having conflict, okay, parents are having conflict, or parents are getting divorced, and then in some cases, parents will say to the child, we're having all these problems because of you, or we're getting a divorce because of you. In reality, there's no way that the child is to blame for this. In many cases, without even mentioning it, without even blaming the child, many children blame themselves when parents get divorced and feels like they had some fault to do with that. So again, these are problematic type of statements. We're just giving these examples to really think about what are we saying to our children. Okay, what are the words that are coming out? Yani, another problematic thing is comparing between siblings or other children. Okay, you might say to the child or to the kid, your brother is not like that. Why can't you be more like your sister? Look at how your sister is. Look how your sister studies. Why don't you study like that? So on and so forth. Look at Fulan's son. He memorized the Quran. Why can't you? And so on and so forth. These are problematic statements. They're dangerous and they're problematic. It makes the child feel, firstly, when it's your own children, it makes the child feel like you prefer that sibling over the other. It's like they prefer one over the other. It can also damage the relationship between those children, those siblings. Every child has unique qualities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed every kid with different strengths. Everybody has positive qualities. Everybody has certain characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made for them. So you want to highlight your child's strengths and their positive qualities. You don't want to, that are specific to them. You don't want to be comparing them or making them feel less than others and so on and so forth. So these are statements that are damaging. Another one is with young children who are learning, right? They're learning to tie their shoe, they're learning to eat with a spoon, they're learning to drink from a cup, so on and so forth. You know, when you're in a rush to do something, you don't want to give the child the chance to tie his own shoes, you do it for him. Rather than feeling like the kid is going to make a mess, so you feed him. Rather than letting the child have the experience, don't worry about the mess, don't worry if his clothes gets dirty, don't worry if he has to take a bath after, don't worry if it's going to take a little longer for him to tie his shoes. When you make these sort of statements and actions, you're really limiting the child from learning and growing and progressing, right? You want to do everything for them, you don't let them make mistakes, you don't let them learn, right? And really you're instilling in the child a feeling of ajz, a feeling of inability, as if he is not able to do certain things. So, any child, any kid who's growing, they need to learn, they need to practice. They're acquiring skills and abilities, right? They're growing, and you have to give them the space to be able to do that, right? Many people are overly concerned about trivial things, whether he has to bath, whether his clothes got dirty, or whatnot. But if you think the child has the ability to do this thing, then give them the time and the space to be able to do it. Don't deflate them, don't put them down. Have patience for the greater benefit. The greater benefit is from them to learn and grow and progress. Number 7, a lot of times a child might be sitting in a conversation or having a discussion with their parent, right? And their parent tells them to do something, and the child asks, what's the reason? Why do we have to do that? Why do we have to go here? And what do many parents say? What's that? Because I said. Exactly, because I said so. What do you guys think is the problem with this? Your child, you want to give them some level of respect, and you want to help them to understand, and you want them to be bought in. What's happening? What are we doing? You want to be able to. You don't want him just to be you don't want to be just a drill sergeant, and you're just ordering and commanding, and half the time the child doesn't understand why or what's the reason or what's going on. And you want to give explanations and make time, to help them understand and give them that respect. The answer of I said so. You want to treat him with more respect than that. You could tell him, in some cases, if you're, even just to explain to them the different roles. I'm the father, I'm the mother, and this moment here in time, I have to make this decision. and we have to go ahead. I'm not able to change my mind, so on and so forth. We'll give them an explanation. Also, stay away from any kinds of ridiculing statements. You're a failure. You'll always be a failure. You're always like this, so on and so forth. They're not productive. When you look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he treated children with respect. There wasn't a situation where the Prophet ﷺ, he had a drink of water or milk, and he was sitting, and to one side of him were older men, and to his right side was a young boy. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said to the young boy, he wanted to give them to drink. He said to the young boy, "Ata'dhan li." He said to him, "An a'ti ha'ula." He said to the young boy, "Would you give me permission or allow me to give the drink to the elders first?" And actually the boy, he said, "No, by Allah, I will not allow anyone to take my right from you." He wanted to be the one to drink first after the Prophet ﷺ and drink from the spot where the Prophet ﷺ said. But the main point I'm getting across here is, how did the Prophet ﷺ communicate to the boy? He said, "Ata'dhan li an a'ti ha'ula." Like, he's speaking to him in a very respectful way. The Prophet, peace be upon him, when he would meet children, he would always greet them. He wouldn't look to children like they're nobody. And when children would run up to the Prophet ﷺ and they would grab his hand and pull him along, he would allow them to do so. So, to wrap up for today, the intentions of parents in all of these cases is to improve the behavior of the child. Almost all of the parents, they never wake up conspiring against their children, trying to have like some kind of mu'amara against their children, or some kind of their goal isn't to harm their child or anything like that. But at the same time, the intention doesn't justify the means. You may have a good intention, but your action is problematic. Your behavior as a parent is actually inflicting wounds and maybe damaging the child psychologically. And these type of actions can affect the personality, the emotional well-being. The word you say can either be something of a support, and it can strengthen him, or it can be something that is wounding and deflating. It can be a form of tarbiyah, or it can be a form of ridicule. It can be something that is encouraging and uplifting, or it can be something that is deflating. No parent, like I said, intends to do harm, but sometimes if you're not mindful about what you're doing, then you end up doing harm. And this is what many parents do unintentionally. It may seem like it's just words, but in reality, you are delivering a message that gets engraved into the child. So, let's be mindful of the words and the way we communicate with our children. The focus is always to address the problem in the proper way. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to what is best. And with that, we'll resume next week. وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آل محمد. الحمد لله رب العالمين.